I'm glad to be here. I obviously have learned the last half an hour that I have a brain that doesn't work, but I will do my best with the brain I have. And I'm really happy to be here. Yes. My story is quite simple. I am a psychologist. I have a PhD in psychology, and I also worked as a clinical community psychologist with patients. Before I did all that, I also had a diagnosis of schizophrenia for myself, and I was sick from I was about 16 or maybe 13 until I was in late 20s, and then I started studying, and now I am living a very good life. I'm very happy and satisfied and work a lot and do a lot of fun things. And I promise you, I've done nothing to my DNA. I did a lot of things to my life and to my lifestyle and to my surroundings and to the people I'm with, but I have not changed my DNA. When I was studying 20 years ago, they told us a lot about schizophrenia, and they told us about hallucinations and delusions and everything, but they didn't tell us so much about sense of self. But the last 5 to 10 years, there have been a lot of research on sense of self and altered sense of self. And when I first learned about this research, I was thinking, oh, yes, that makes sense. Because my main symptom when I was sick was that I felt that I lost myself. I was thinking about myself in third person. She was going to school. She was thinking about killing herself. And then it was something in my head that was like, if she is killing herself, will I die? And there it was another thought saying, if I don't know who that I am that is wondering what that I am, who is the I that is wondering about the I? And you say this will be confusing, and you will never find the answer because it's an I that is thinking about me and it's all messed up. And I never found the solution, but I found it in meeting people, not in thinking about it, but in relation. When you see me, when you confirm me, when you talk to me, when we're together. And over the years, I found I'm me. That's okay. And I've found a secureness, and I never doubt myself now. But when I was sick, that was my main symptom. And there's a lot of research now, mainly in schizophrenia and some in bipolar disorder, that this feeling of losing yourself, patients can tell about it in different ways. Some say that God is controlling me, the devil is controlling me, the government is controlling me, someone had operated a chip behind my ear that's controlling me, someone stole my thoughts. And it's all quite poetic ways of saying, I don't know who I am, I don't know if I am. And if people get help finding themselves, sometimes things get a little bit better. Does it make sense? Yes. Good. No. Okay, but that's okay too, because it's very okay that we have different meanings. When I was admitted the first time, I felt that I was dead, and I was telling the nurses that I'm dead. And they, of course, said, you're not dead because body don't talk. And that's okay, because, of course, their bodies don't talk. But it was not okay, because they could have asked me, how is it to feel that you're dead? I was longing for a little bit more curiousness. How does it feel? When do you feel slightly alive, and when do you feel totally dead? And it's very important to get met at something else than a disease. Because what's happening was, in that time when I was at my lowest point in life, I really didn't know if I existed. I write in my diary, I still write in my diary, I've always written in my diary, but at that time I didn't write I. Yesterday I wrote, I am in Iceland, it's wonderful. But at that time I was writing X. I don't know if X exists. I don't know what X will do, because there was no me, there was no I, there was no personal pronouns. It was just, I don't know. And of course, when I told the health personnel that I don't know if I exist, I don't know who I am, and then say, oh yes, you are a schizophrenic. I don't know if I am, yes, you are a schizophrenic. And that's not okay, because I needed the diagnosis. I needed someone to confirm me as a human being. And I think in my work as a psychologist and as a user activist, I've heard so many stories about people that are met on their symptoms, on their diagnosis, on their faults, on their failures, without someone asking them, what's your story? What's your plans? What's your dream? Who are you? What have you experienced in life? Because even if I really agree with some of the things you just told us, I missed really the effects of trauma. Because there's been so much research the last year on the effects of trauma. And children don't choose being exposed to adverse childhood experience or to trauma. And we know that trauma causes all kinds of serious effects in a person's life. You can get mental illness, the risk of psychosis. John Reed has done a wonderful paper on that. He says that the risk of getting psychosis is 520 times as high if you have been exposed to 5 different childhood relational traumas. And childhood traumas also increase the risk for cancer, for obesity, for cardiovascular diseases, and for a lot of problems later in life, because you have different regulatory system in your brain, you have higher levels of cortisol, etc., etc., etc. So when I was sick, I was met that you are sick, and they didn't ask, what's your story? So I will tell you just a few things about my story. My story is really simple. When I was 3 years old, my dad got cancer. So for 2 years, we were just wondering when he will die. Not if he would die, he would die. But from I was 3 to when I was 5, I was just waiting for him to die. And that is a terrible thing to do when you're a little kid. Every time I went into the living room when he was lying in his hospital bed in the living room, I was thinking, maybe he's dead. Every night when I was going to bed, I was thinking, maybe he's dead when I'm awake. And one day when I was at a neighbor playing with their dog, my mother came and told me he was dead. And since I was 5 years old, I think it must be my fault. Because when you're 5 years old, everything's your fault. Because you're magical, and if you do something magical, thing can happen. And I was thinking, if I'm a very, very nice girl, my dad won't die, and he died. So I was thinking, okay, I must be even more nice girl and even more perfect, so my mother don't die. Next year, when I was 6, I started preschool, and I was thinking I must be perfect. So first day at preschool, I was asking the teacher, when can I write an essay? We hadn't learned the alphabet yet, but I have learned it. So I wanted to write an essay, and I wanted to do difficult mathematics. And of course, the other kids bullied me because I was strange. And I remember we were playing with some blocks, you know, kids are building castles and things of blocks. And we were sitting there building, and they will build the tallest tower in the world. And I just raised up and looked at them and said, what's the point? We're all going to die soon. And then I walked away. And if you wonder, that's not a good way to get friends when you're 6 years old. They think you're quite strange, and they started, of course, bullying me. And when they started bullying me, I was thinking, it's because I'm a bad person, because I killed my dad. And then I tried to be even more perfect, and then they think I was even more strange. And then I was bullied for 10 years, until I was 16, and then I was put into psychiatry, and then they told me that I was, not that I killed my father, but that I had a genetic disease, and that I will never get well, or never get a work, or never get a house or a family, because it was something wrong with me. And then I was in psychiatry for quite many years. And they told me again and again that it was something wrong with me, and I will never get better, and I have to go on all this medication. And you know, I didn't get happy of all those beautiful messages. And one day I was put in a home for elderly people. You know, you have those in Iceland too. You know, just support homes for elderly people. So I was put in there because there was nothing more to do with me. I was 24 years old, and I was put in an elderly support home. And I was just sitting there. And this woman from the social services came to visit me, and she said, the Norwegian government have decided that everyone under the age of 26 need to have a plan. What are your plans? What do you want to do when you get healthy? And she asked some other questions. She asked, can you go out alone? No. Can you eat alone? No. Can you make your own food? No. I'm not allowed to be in the same room as glass and tableware. Can you? No. Have we tried rehabilitation? Yes, I failed in folding towels and other difficult tasks. And then she asked, what do you want to do when you get healthy? And I said, I would like to be a psychologist, thank you, please. And she said, okay. And then we wrote a plan. I haven't finished school. I didn't have any formal education, so I couldn't apply for the university. I couldn't go out on my own. I couldn't read a book. I couldn't watch TV. I watched Fisk Tank, looking at yellow fish, red fish. That was my level of complexity. And we made a very, very long and very, very time-consuming plan to get me from the elderly center and from the fish tank and into the university. And then we just followed the plan for several years. But for me, I really think that that woman meeting me, telling me, what's your plan? Asking me, what's your plan? What do you want to do in life? For me, that was a new type of mirroring. She was seeing me, not as a symptom, not as a failure, not as a diagnosis, but as a human being. What have you experienced? What are your plans? So, that's my story, very short. And now I want to tell a little bit about my PhD. Because when I was, one of the times I was hospitalized, I was in isolated seclusion, solitary seclusion. It was just a room with a concrete floor and concrete walls and nothing else, a mattress in the corner. It wasn't even a bucket there. I have to do what I have to do on the floor in the corner. And I was in that room for 10 weeks. And you know, it's quite boring to sit alone in a naked isolation cell for 10 weeks. It's also torture, of course. But, and this is very strange, because when I came to this point, I always want to say, to avoid being mad, but of course I already was mad, but I had to do something with my brain. So I was sitting at the seclusion cell and thinking, couldn't we do this any better? Wouldn't a school be a better model? And then I got my education as a psychologist, and I discovered that in Denmark, in fact, I have schools for people with severe mental illnesses. It's called Day Folk High Schools, and it's wonderful schools. You can attend to them 5 days a week, 5 hours a day if you want to, and you can go at the school for as many years as you would like. There are no exams, there are no pressure, and there is a huge variety of lesson plans. It could be music or philosophy or psychology or math or language, foreign language or Danish or literature, film, arts, crafts, sewing, cooking, music, whatever. So I was thinking maybe that will be a better solution than having people in psychiatry. So I did a qualitative study. I was talking with, in Norway we have something called DPS. It's district psychiatry centers. It's like, it's wards and it's outpatients treatment. It's quite standard traditional psychiatric treatment. So I was talking with 14 patients that was in an open ward for 3 weeks. And I was talking with them in the ward, and then I talked with 9 of them a second time when they was mostly at home. Some have been admitted to the ward again. I also talked with 14 health professionals working at these wards. And I talked with 15 students on 2 different schools, and 9 of them I talked with 2 times because the last school was included in the study a little too late that I had time to interview them the second time. And I also talked to 14 of their teachers, including principals. So I did a lot of interviews. I did 75 interviews, but it's still a qualitative study. It's not, you can say this is not something that we can say something general about. And that's totally correct. It's just a qualitative study. It generates hypotheses, it doesn't test them. Just generate. Good. Let's see what they tell us, because it's quite interesting. The patients, they were really happy being on the ward. They was saying that, oh, it's good to be here at the wards, because at the wards I will get food, I will get someone to talk to, I'm not that lonely, I have a good everyday life, I get up in the morning, I have something to do, there are nice people to talk to, and I really like it. But they were only at the ward for 3 weeks maximum. And sometimes they had to wait at least 3 months before they were allowed back at the wards again. So they talked a lot about discontinuity. They was talking about they having a really hard time at home, and then they were admitted to a ward and they get better really fast. And then they was having to go home again, very often against their will, and they really rapidly get a hard time and get sick again. And then they applied to go to the ward, and they was rejected, and they get really sick, and then they were admitted to the wards, and they get better, and they were sent home, and they get sick again. And they told me that they had been, all of the informants, both in Denmark and Norway, had severe mental illness. Psychosis, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, a lot of addiction, both alcohol and illegal drugs. Some have learning problems, some have autism, some have a lot of different. Everyone told me they had childhood relational traumas. And all of the informants in Norway told me that they have received short-time treatment, so again and again and again for 30 years, or 40 years, or 20 years. None of them had ever received long-term treatment for 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 years. And I find it so sad that we never had the time to give them good long-term treatment for 7 years, but we have treated them short time for 30 years. And it's really a tragedy. They talked about being at home. They were lonely. They got a very little help. They were often asked to ask for help and go for help, and it was too difficult for them because they were too sick. And they couldn't go to all the activity centers and whatever. They also find that their treatment they get were very little tailored. It wasn't individualized, it was standard treatment for standard diagnosis. And it wasn't that many who asked them, what do you need? What do you want? What do you think is fun? They often told me that they had to adapt to the system and that the system didn't adapt to them. They were really, really lonely. Most of them had no stable relations. Not family, not close friends. Their most important relations was health professionals, and health professionals went and go and come and go, and it was no stability. And they told me about living in a persistent, chronic emergency situation for 10, 20, 30 years. It was really, really hard and tough to hear their stories. This is one telling about his experience at the ward. I get stressed out when I don't get to do what I've been told to do, follow the program at the ward and things like that. It's especially important here because if I don't do what I'm supposed to do, I might lose my place at the ward. I have to sign that I will be following the program at the ward and do what I've been told. It's kind of scary. I have had some nightmares about it. You see, they had to adapt to the system. It wasn't like, you're sick, you're here at the ward, what do you need, what can I do to help you? It was like, you have to sign that you will do whatever I find that you need. And how can you find your sense of self when no one asks you about who you are? The rest of the stay at the ward was okay, but after the stay, there were no follow-up treatment. So now I'm sick again. Of course, because he was just released without any treatment. I had it all right from I left here at the ward the 3rd of December to Christmas, and so I've been depressed since then. He was interviewed in April. And there's a third one. I mostly sleep or lay in bed all day. D, it's a hell. Yesterday night I didn't sleep at all. I do not live, I just exist. And the fifth one, they, also the health professional, they don't believe that I'm sick enough, and then I get no help. And as a psychologist, I think that if you have to argue about how sick you are, oh, I'm so sick, I really need it, I'm so sick, I can't do it, then I will listen to myself arguing about how sick I am, and I will not get better. It would be a much better strategy to just give people something and see if they need it or not, without they having to telling you all the time how sick they are, because that's not very healthy. After I've been at the ward, I have to wait 3 months. Actually, that's a bit annoying, since it's very easy to forget what you learned. It's very easy to go back to old habits, and it had been nice to get some support. What strikes me the most is how reasonable this is. Of course it is. You can't go to a class and then go home for 3 months without anything support. I have a dog. When I was at that kind of class you go to with dogs, so they should be nice and good dogs, 1 week after the class, I got an email. How is Eddie doing? Are you training him to go nicely in his leash? Please see the attachment with all the things we did when you were at our dog school. Of course, because we all need repetition, we all need someone to ask, how are you doing? They didn't get that kind of email after being at the wards. Okay, so they don't have a very good everyday life. But what about their personal development during their years? Now, they told me that I asked them to make like a line about their lives and something, and they told me that I have no lasting and meaningful relationships. They were very lonely. They told me that about objectification of others. Instead of saying that I have friends, they said, I like the other patient in the wards because I can practice being social with them. And practice on someone is not the same on being friends with them. They present themselves. I asked them, how would you present yourself to a stranger? And they said, I'm sick. They were, in fact, spectators in their own life, telling me what others have told them about them. And they told me a lot about hopelessness. When I arrived at the ward, the nurses told me I was very gray or very sick and had a very difficult time. However, yesterday the psychologist told me I was doing much better. And it's so sad, because it shouldn't be a psychologist telling you that if you're better or not. The psychologist should be asking you, how are you feeling? How is it for you? And they told me things like that again and again and again. What you do yesterday? I was walking in the forest with the ward. Good. Did you like it? Research had shown that it's good for people with mental illness to walk in the woods. Yes, but did you like it? Research has shown that it's good for me. Not what I asked about. Someone said, I'm suffering through the days, and describes being alone all the day, all the week, without any human interaction. And then I asked them, where will you be in 5 years from now? If it's not happening anything new, I will probably be at the same spot in 5 years as I am today. Nothing has changed the last 5 years, so it probably wouldn't change the next 5 years either. I don't know where I will be. There are no future, there are no hope. And the last one, she just stared at me. She didn't have any answer. They didn't see any hope because there were no plans. They were just told that they were sick, and they've been in this chronicle out and in for years without any changes, and no one has told them any plans to get them better, and as a result, there were no hope. Let's talk about something more interesting and funny. Let's talk about the students. Remember, I call them students because they were students at the school, but they had the same diagnosis. They have been in psychiatry for 10 or 20 or 30 years. They have a long history of medication and being at wards, and someone have been at wards from they were 14 and they were now 60 or 65. So they have long histories some of them had long history of mental illness, and they had the same type of diagnosis as the Norwegian patients. They told me about a safe and supportive environment. They told me about, in fact, exactly the same things that the students and the patients in Norway. They say, it's a nice place to be. I got food in the morning and at dinner time. I get something to do. It's activities here. It's very easy. It's a lot of nice people here that I can talk with. I get comfort. I got support. But instead of being at the ward 24 hours a day for 3 weeks, they were at the school 5 hours a day for as long as they wanted. Some for 1 year, some for 2 years, some for 15 years. But they lived at home and they could get that support as long as they needed to. They got structure, community, food, physical exercise. They got a lot of opportunities for learning. That's really interesting. The fact that learning something new was really important for them. One person said, usually the voices will tell me that I'm stupid and that I'm worthless. But yesterday when I went home from school and the voices as usually told me that you are worthless, I was answering them, okay, but I'm good in English grammar. And it's a matter of fact, he was good in English grammar, he learned it. And for me, I not necessarily think that the voices are from outside. I think the voices is a part of him. And when this part of him telling him what he has probably told himself all life, I'm worthless, and probably what's his parents or teachers or whatever have told him. And now there was a new voice. I can do something. I can learn something. I could literally talk about this for hours, but I cannot, so let's rush through. They talked about a lot of individual support and customization, tailored. If you had a good day, you got a lot of things to do. If you had a bad day, you could just sit in the back of the classroom looking in the book or whatever. And maybe most important, they talk about stable, long-term relationships with the teacher, with other students, and with the school as a community. A lot of them said, I'm trying outside the school now. I will try normal schools, normal education. I've got myself a job. But if everything fails, I can come back to the school. I always have this as a security. Nothing can really go wrong in my life anymore because I always will be welcomed back at the school, so I can try new things, and if it doesn't work, I come back here and they will welcome me and they will take care of me. So it was an initiative to try new things because it was safe. And of course they came back mostly because they wanted to tell that, oh, I've got a new baby, or I got a new job, or I get an A on my exam or something. And a lot of them said, I really don't have a family, but this school, this is my family now. I will come to them when I have something, good or bad. In Denmark, it's really difficult to get individual therapy, and some really miss that because some have tried it and they said that was a good thing. So, the school provides structure in an otherwise sad everyday life. If I didn't have the school, I would have been home in my apartment all alone. The school gives content and meaning of life. I really feel that. I have been very negative, but now I'm happy. I love my life, and I love everything in my life. Isn't it beautiful? And I really like this, because it was an old man. He's been sick for most of his life. He had a lot of coerced admissions at wards, many, many times a year, often with police and everything that comes with that. And after he started school, he had no forced admittments to wards, but he had still in the summer. Not in the school years, but in the summer when the school had his summer holiday. And then he told me that he had made agreement with his art teachers. I don't know, but you have the Skagen painters. It was at Skagen, and they paint a lot of beautiful art, and he learned about the Skagen painters, and he made an appointment with his art teacher that this summer he will paint. He will go out to the coast and he will paint just as the Skagen painters, and he will bring his art map with him when school started, and they will work with it next year. That summer, it was really good. Yes, just imagine that you are sitting out on the beach and suddenly you have been there for 4 hours without noticing. You can feel the coolness of the evening and the light breeze. And it doesn't matter if it's 4 miles to ride your bike home. It doesn't matter, because you are thinking, tomorrow you're going to try something different with the water. You are going to try something different with the sky. Yes. So I found out that happiness is the unintended side effect of living a meaningful life. Oh, I know it's silly, but it's true. Isn't it beautiful? The students told me 2 different descriptions about development based on age and how long they have been sick. Younger people, younger than 40 years, they told me that they wanted to get well, they wanted to start an education, have children, etc., etc. Older people, 40 to 80 years, of course, they didn't want to have children, and they maybe didn't want to have an education, etc., etc. But they all, regardless of age, told me that they wanted to develop, and that they felt that they were developing. They felt less lonely. They had more friends. Some of them just at school, some also at home. When I asked them, how will you present yourself? They said, I will present myself as a musician, as a writer, as a sportsman or a sportswoman, as a painter, as a mother, as a newlywed. They all have something else than sickness they would use to present themselves. They told about less symptoms, or at least most of them had less symptoms. Some of them still have symptoms, but they have much better coping strategies. Like one young man, one man, he had a lot of thought disturbances. He had schizophrenia and a lot of thought disturbances. And he told me that when the voices, when the word salad gets too much to me, I can just go and talk to the other students, and I will get calmer, and it will help me think in better ways. All told me that they have a better qualitative life. They were more happy, they had more interest, and they all have some plans for the future. 2 years ago, I used to think, you will die soon. I thought I will die soon because I felt terrible and I couldn't see any future. However, after a while, suddenly one day I just thought, no, I didn't want to live like this anymore. I don't want to think that I don't have a future, and I don't want to think that the whole world is against me. It's not. The world is on my side. What's happening? I told her, we talked about it. She couldn't really describe it, but she has been at the school for 2 years. 5 days a week, 5 hours a day for 2 years, people had been nice to her. Comforting her, laughed with her, cried with her, giving her good food to eat, funny things to do, taking her at holiday, taking her to the movies and to concert and to art exhibitions. And after 2 years with happiness and care and a good life, she suddenly discovered that the world was on her side. Very, very strange thing, isn't it? Sometimes I think I must be the most stupid researcher in the world, because I used 5 years of my life, and what did I discover? I discovered that people who are eating healthy food, are physically active, have good relations, good activities, have nice people in their life, seems to be a little bit more happy, a lot more happy than people who sit alone in their apartment, eating dry bread and being all alone all the time. Very, very strange. Not at all. But I think what's important is people don't have a terrible life because of their disease. They have a terrible life because their disease is stopping them from doing the things that give us all as human beings a good life. And if we give them those things in a way that they, even if they have their disease, can cope with, if it makes it easy to have a good life, just giving them to them, then they have a good life. And some get completely well, and some get better. I'm thinking, I will have an education. I will have a totally normal life. Children, you know, just an ordinary life with work, education, house, husband, children. I know many Scandinavians take that for granted, but it's not obvious for me. I'm from a different world, so it would be a big deal for me to achieve that. Where will you be in 5 years from now? I see myself in balance. I'm thinking that all that I've been through must have been for something fucking good. Yes, I think that everything I have experienced must turn into something good, that I've learned something, that I can use to something positive. Now I'm 45 years old. However, I know that age is not important. Maybe I will start with another career, but as long as I have a good time here and I are enjoying the school, I will continue. This man gave me the most beautiful description of recovery that I ever heard. He said, when I started school and walked down the street to the school, all the houses were shouting at me, "You're an idiot. You don't build houses. You don't work in houses. You go to that special school for dumb people. You are a total failure. And he said, this morning when I went to school, all the houses were shouting to me, have a nice day. We are here. The city is full of houses. We don't need any more houses. There are people working in all the houses. Just go ahead and have a fun day at school. If we use a standard measurement of craziness, this man is still crazy. He's hearing the house talking to him. But if we ask him, what are the houses telling you? He had a tremendous development that I think is the most important of all. I will stop really soon. When I was in that seclusion cell for 10 weeks, 2.5 months, a nurse came into me and he gave me a paper with a black square on it. I was not allowed to talk to the nurses, and they were not allowed to talk to me, and they were really not allowed to give me any paper or any crayons and anything, but he gave me that. And he said, will you please, and he gave me some crayons, and he said, will you please draw something on this paper? And yes, for stopping myself from scratching me, they had just put gaspin all over my hands, so I didn't really have fingers. I just have paws, like a dog or something. So it wasn't very easy to draw because I hadn't any fingers, just paws. But I took the crayons between my paws and I drew something like that. And I gave it back to the nurse, and he said, I ruined your whole paper. I was drawing a big black square on the middle of it, and you could never get that square away. You can never remove it. But it's still there, but it's a part of a pattern with a lot of colors and a lot of patterns, and it's a very nice picture. You will never get this 10 weeks, this illness, this experience out of your life. You can never remove it, but you can make it a part of a pattern, and it could still be a nice pattern and a nice life. And then now that I would probably never been invited to Iceland and to meet all of you if I hadn't had this big, ugly square in my life. So I made a pattern, and I'm quite satisfied. And I knew from my research that the problem is not the problem. The problem is the surroundings. We didn't change the genetics in any of these patients. The patients in Norway and the patients in Denmark, they get different surroundings, different people. They get hope, they get relations, they get the ability to learn, to develop, to have fun. Everything that we know that people like. And that's good for us as human beings. Not as different human beings, but as human beings. Because we are more alike than we are different. Thank you for your...
Thank you very much, Arnhild, for this beautiful message. Now we will have a short coffee break. There is some coffee and soda and other refreshments. And then we will finish with Mary and a discussion period at the end. Thank you.